This podcast is a work of historical interpretation. While we strive for accuracy, some aspects of history are open to interpretation and debate. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Time Tellers. Maybe I should scoot up towards the mic.
Maybe.
Like Henry away.
Oh, this could be bad.
What
I
happened?
felt like I was going to start sneezing.
Oh.
It's like, oh, that would suck.
Again, welcome to Time Tellers, where history comes alive. Actually, I wrote where hidden histories come alive.
I don't remember what I wrote on the other episode.
I'm your host, Renee. Well, one of them. And also with me is Dan.
I'm always here.
I know, but half the time I forget to introduce you, and then I feel bad.
Do you really?
Not really.
You're not being nice already. I've seen you for like 5 minutes and you're already being mean to me.
I'm sorry. Anyways, today we are diving deep into the shadows of the American Revolutionary War to uncover the story of an extraordinary network of spies, the Culper Spy Ring.
Oh, I thought that was just a TV show that they made up.
Nope.
Oh, okay.
It's a tale of espionage, bravery, cunning, and secrecy, vital to America's victory against the British, also known as Great Britain and England, or the Redcoats. Sorry, we've been talking a lot about the Revolutionary War at school, and
Or King George's private army.
that too. And my students get very confused between like patriots and loyalists and American, well, not Americans, but like British, English, like redcoats. Like they don't get that it's all the same. Well, not patriots, but you know, like,
Oh, boy.
so.
Well, then teach them better.
Do you know how many times I've repeated the same conversation? Well, that's because I have so many different students. But anyways.
Oh. Well, you didn't open yours yet.
I know. It's the late 1770s, and the young American colonies are fighting desperately against Britain, the world's strongest empire. It's hard to, like, demonstrate how much of a powerhouse they were at the time.
Well, they ruled like half the world.
Yeah. So, the British military power.
I was hoping my Svenska fish.
Highly trained and disciplined army, professional soldiers, again known as redcoats, as I mentioned earlier. They had the most powerful navy, dominating sea trade and supply routes, had more excellent financial resources and access to global supplies than we are comparing the British military power to the colonial renegades for all sense purposes. Yeah. The British had experienced leadership and established military hierarchy, including, at one point, George Washington. Before this, because he was in the British military.
Traitor.
Quite literally would have been executed if that had all gone wrong for treachery.
Yeah, but nowadays treason's okay.
Apparently.
It's commended.
Yep. The British were well equipped with ample ammunition, weaponry, uniforms, and provisions, meaning food and whatnot. They also had the Hessian, which are German mercenaries, to bolster troop numbers.
And what color did they wear?
I don't think they had did they?
Green.
Oh, that kind of makes sense. Let's talk about the Americans real quick. The colonial military power. What was it? Anyways, these were primarily militia forces, initially untrained, poorly disciplined, and inexperienced. These were literally farmers with guns if they were lucky. We had very limited naval capability, relying mostly on privateers and limited foreign assistance. There is a scarcity of funds.
Thank you, France.
Yep. And that was literally in my next bullet point.
Sorry.
But you are correct. Scarcity of funds, supplies, and ammunition, reliance on captured British supplies, and external assistance, meaning France. Because France and England did not like each other at that period and were enemies. So the enemy of my friend is my friend. Wait, no. The friend. Wait, I just butchered that. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Yay! I got it. That's exactly. So when we help liberate France from the Germans during World War II, I could say we're repaying them for helping liberate us from the British in the 1770s.
Yeah. And then we paid them back with freedom fries.
But the colonists did have the advantages of fighting on home territory, familiar terrain, shorter supply lines. We didn't necessarily have to wait for everything to come from far away. There was a motivation of strong sense of purpose, defending our homeland and ideals of independence. We say homeland, knowing that there were, of course, other people living there before the colonists, and they would be fighting on both sides of this war, the natives.
Yeah.
Effective guerrilla warfare tactics and innovative military strategies adapted to circumstances. This is, of course, how we basically won, and the guerrilla warfare, the British had no idea what to do with that. And then we also started targeting their higher-ups, generals and whatnot, and that was very frowned upon and not good.
Yeah, well.
In the eyes of the British, but it definitely helped the Americans win. Britain held clear advantages in conventional military strength, resources, and organization. However, the colonialists leveraged their familiarity with the terrain, innovative tactics, and ideological determination to offset British superiority. Crucially, the intervention of foreign allies, notably France, again, France, France,
France?
Yeah, that one. Helped neutralize Britain's advantages, eventually contributing significantly to the colonial victory. France. Yeah. Anyways, it's spring break. I'm on a little bit of a being a little extra.
Yeah.
I have a little more energy because we were recording at noon and not like 5 p.m.
Send help.
And I slept till 10. So there's that.
I slept till 11.
Wow.
I had my alarm set at 11.
I had my alarm set for like 9:30. But anyway, General George Washington knew that battles alone wouldn't win the war. Information and intelligence could make or break their struggle for independence. Enter the Culper Spy Ring, masterminded by Major Benjamin Talmadge. Now, of course, this is not the only spy ring, and I will mention a few others later, but this is just the main one I think maybe some people might know.
Yeah, because of TV.
Yeah, because of TV. Born in Setauket, New York, Talmadge attended Yale College, graduating in 1773. He quickly joined the Continental Army. Again, that is the Patriots. That was another word that confused my students. This is the Patriots. Continental Army is under George Washington's control, and they are fighting the British, right? Just keep it on track. Rising to the rank of major and serving closely with General George Washington. Post-war, Talmadge served as a U.S. congressman from Connecticut from 1801 to 1817 and remained active in politics and education. He died in 1835, leaving an influential legacy in early American intelligence operations. I just thought it was kind of cool, like, he went on to actually, like, continue.
Yeah.
And not just, like, fade off into the sunset. Talmadge, as an intelligence officer under Washington, recruited trusted childhood friends from Setauket. I'm not pronouncing this correctly. Long Island. Among them were Abraham Woodhull, who used the alias Samuel Culper, and Robert Townsend, known as Culper Jr., hence the name of the spy ring. These key figures' their true identities, remain secret even from each other. Both men were deeply committed to secrecy, and their identities remained closely guarded for a very long time. Townsend's identity as Culper Jr. remained unknown until historians uncovered it in the 20th century. I almost said 1900s, but I wrote 20th century. That was my confusion there, which both would be accurate because the 20th century is the 1900s. But
which makes no sense, but yes.
Yeah, I confused myself. With my own writing. It's great how I do that. And this is typed. Like, imagine if it was my handwriting. Yeah. Benjamin Talmadge, as the ring's handler, knew their identities, but maintained strict secrecy. Townsend, in particular, lived quietly and privately after the war, never publicly acknowledging his espionage role. Woodhull maintained a low profile as well, never publicly discussing his covert wartime activities. They were probably afraid, like, especially during, like, the War of 1812, that the British would win the War of 1812 and they would still be hung.
Yeah.
I mean, for being traitors and, spies. That's just a guess. I have no clue. But what made this spy network so effective? Their techniques were revolutionary in their own right. They encoded sensitive information using secret ciphers and codes, shifting numbers for words, or employing aliases to disguise identities, as mentioned above. Using a numerical cipher known as the Culper code, they substituted numbers for words, places, and names. For example, George Washington's code was 7-Eleven. And I don't think they meant the convenience store.
I do.
What? We don't even have those here.
I wish. Another advantage of New York. They're everywhere.
Messages were often written using invisible ink, typically composed of ferrous sulfate or iron sulfate. The ink became visible when treated with specific chemical reagents, safeguarding messages if intercepted. They do mention the spy ring in America, The Story of Us, the second episode. They talk about that. If anybody watches that series, that's one I show the kids. Not the whole series, but I pick out episodes because it's pretty good for your basic, understanding of what was going on.
Did you make them watch Ken Burns' Civil War too?
No, but I should. I love Ken Burns. Dust Bowl. We do talk about the Dust Bowl periodically.
What about jazz? One. Jazz is a good one.
Jazz would be a good one. I should do that, especially during Black History Month. That's a good one. He has a lot of good documentaries, but yeah, those don't go over as well with the kids. I love them. But they're in this day of TikTok, you need fast-paced, you can't have a 2.5-hour documentary. I have a hard time enough showing them movies, after reading the books. So,
TikTok
but that's what's nice about the Story of Us. At least it gives you, it could also, talk a little more about minorities.
Yeah.
Definitely doesn't talk, especially about the second one, doesn't talk much about the natives' involvement in the Revolutionary War. Now, the first one talks more about the natives because it's
Yeah.
But, yeah. And there's one with, the Trail of Tears mention, stuff, but, yeah. But it's a good, starter pack for American history. Before you dive into more of the nuances, and I feel like Ken Burns is kind of like that too.
Yeah.
He's the second step, but his Civil War one does at least talk about the issue of slavery. It's not like he glossed over that and that. And my uncle used to be well, he probably still is, obsessed with the Civil War. I was I shouldn't say obsessed, but I was his. Anyways, we have
Phil Collins level.
No,
okay.
He had a lot of documentaries and books, and if I didn't know what to get him for a present or something, I knew. So then they also had dead drops, which were messages were hidden in secret locations such as hollow logs, fence posts, or buried containers to exchange information discreetly.
The original geocaching.
Mm-hmm. Something that was used forever in spy world techniques. Couriers retrieved and delivered messages without direct contact between spies, minimizing the risk of exposure.
What did you do?
Nothing.
Oh.
I thought you dropped adjusting something.
Oh, I thought you dropped a piece of candy.
Oh, no. That wouldn't be unheard of. So they also had their secret identities and code names. As I mentioned earlier, Abraham Woodhull operated as Samuel Culper Jr. and Robert Townsend as Samuel Culper Jr. Other members, including Austin Rowe, who was a courier, and Caleb Brewster, who was a whaleboat captain and messenger, used aliases as well to mask their identities. A carefully orchestrated network using trusted couriers, including horseback riders such as Austin Rowe and boat operators like Caleb Brewster, delivered messages swiftly and secretly from Long Island to Connecticut and then to Washington's headquarters. Because remember, he is the head of the spy ring. It's just not the day-to-day operational head. Occasionally, this spy ring would spread false or misleading information to confuse or misdirect British intelligence, further protecting their own spies and strategic planning, essential for any war movement. There were specific prearranged signals, such as clothes hung in certain patterns on clotheslines, indicating when messages were ready to pick up or warn of British troop movement. Now, I don't think they had anything necessarily to do with the the 2F by sea lights, but that kind of thing. 1F by land, 2F by sea, the British are coming. At the heart of this network were ordinary citizens performing extraordinary acts. A lesser-known but crucial operative, Anna Strong, signaled fellow spies through laundry hung strategically on her clothesline. Strong famously utilized her clothesline to send covert messages. For example, by hanging a black petticoat and a specific number of white handkerchiefs or garments, she signaled the spy courier Caleb Brewster where messages had been hidden for dead drops, and when it was safe to retrieve them. Each number or placements of garments represented different spots along the Long Island shoreline.
Can you give us a specific example?
Well, I just did with the black petticoat.
Well, but I mean, how many of them that you just gave what it was, not what it represented?
I don't know.
Like, does that mean it's under the tree down 2nd Street and after 7 a.m.? Or, you know what I mean? Are you fake typing?
Sounds like I can type and not look at the page.
Why would you spend too much time on the keyboard?
Well, we had a class in keyboard typing in high school.
So did I. Where they had the cardboard thing they put over it so you couldn't see it?
I don't remember that. But...
Yeah, they had a cardboard thing that went over the keyboard so you couldn't see your hands on it.
Yeah, this just says white handkerchiefs, 1 to 6 of them, indicated the specific cove or beach. So the beach and the coves must have been numbered.
Ah.
It would be like, if there's 3 handkerchiefs, you go to this specific code kind of thing. Oh, here we go. I found it. 1 handkerchief equaled cove A. Now, I don't know where exactly that cove is. That's the problem. Up to cove F. So, like, for example, cove A through cove F isn't definitively documented in surviving records.
Aw.
But it's generally cove A is generally believed to have referred to a safe and commonly used inlet near Strong's Neck, which is where Anna Strong's home was in Long Island. And these might not even exist anymore today, depending on erosion and whatnot.
Yeah.
So they knew what it was, but they didn't necessarily write it down for future generations to know what they were.
Well, that's upsetting. So there could still be stuff hidden there.
You're not wrong. Yeah. You're not wrong there. Living in Setauket, New York, under British occupation, Anna Strong risked severe punishment if discovered. Her signals allowed couriers to coordinate without directly meeting, minimizing the chance of detection. Her involvement was crucial in linking the intelligence gathered by Abraham Woodhull and Robert Townsend with couriers who transported the messages across the Long Island Sound to Benjamin Talmadge and ultimately General Washington. She was like the go-between. A lesser-known yet vital participant was Austin Rowe, a tavern keeper who frequently traveled 55 miles between Setauket and New York City, risking his life with each step. Hidden within everyday commerce, his deliveries concealed crucial intelligence about British movements. His legitimate occupation and routine travel made his movements appear normal and non-suspicious, reducing the risk of detection by British patrols. Because he was going to get his supplies anyways. Like, they were like,
Yeah.
It'd be weird if he wasn't going to pick up his supplies. Once Rowe brought messages from Townsend to New York to Setauket, the intelligence was given to Abraham Woodhull, encoded, and transferred to Caleb Brewster and Anna Strong for signaling and transport across the Long Island Sound to Benjamin Talmadge, who then, of course, related to General George Washington. Let's not forget James Rivington, controversial figure, publicly a loyalist publisher, loyalist meaning loyal to the king, whose newspaper praised King George III. Privately, he fed vital intelligence to the Americans, balancing a dangerous double life. He founded and published Rivington's New York Gazetteer, which became one of the most influential pro-British newspapers in America. It frequently printed news and commentary supportive of the British crown and critical of the revolutionary cause. Patriots despised him, often targeting him with attacks and threats.
I guess that means he was doing his job.
Mm-hmm. His dual role was largely unknown during his lifetime, probably causing him significant issues.
Yeah.
Causing historical debate over his true loyalties. It is believed that his espionage activities may have partially redeemed his reputation among the Patriots. He discreetly provided the American cause with valuable information obtained through his contacts with high-ranking British officials. After the war, Rivington, ironically or bravely, stayed in New York, fading into relative obscurity until his death in 1802. His complex legacy remains intriguing, symbolizing the ambiguity and danger of espionage during the Revolutionary War. But his dual role was uncovered many decades later after his death through historical research and analysis of George Washington's intelligence correspondence. So, not until the 20th century, historians studying Washington's declassified intelligence records and letters found that indirect references to a spy in New York who had access to British military leadership and matched Rivington's profile. This is probably also around the time we find out who Culper Sr. and Jr. were. The informant was only known by his code number. Remember, George Washington was 711. His was 726. This figure was noted as providing valuable intelligence from within the British-occupied New York. Historians later confirmed Code 726 was James Rivington through comparisons between Rivington's timeline, business activities, and locations, matching Rivington's known meetings and access with intelligence passed to Washington. A receipt from Rivington found among Washington's personal effects for payment for intelligence. That's the smoking gun right there. Talk about a rare and key piece of documentation or historical evidence. Please tell me that is safe somewhere in some museum archive place.
It's probably Mount Vernon somewhere.
Yeah, it could be. Some surviving Culper letters hinted at a, quote, friend in the coffee house, unquote, believed to be Rivington. His coffee house and print shop in New York served as a meeting place for British officers and a perfect place to gather intel. So Rivington maintained his loyalist cover publicly throughout and after the war, even staying in New York City. I mean, New York, not New York City, sorry. The Culper Ring, under strict orders from Talmadge in Washington, even afterwards, kept identities and roles compartmentalized, even from each other. So therefore, his spy work was never acknowledged in his lifetime and died in, like I said, relatively obscurity in 1802, seen by many as merely a British propagandist. Yeah. Back to British-occupied New York City.
Yay, New York City.
The dangers were real. And I'm going to talk about a few other things here. New York City was teeming with loyalists, informants, and soldiers actively hunting spies. Do you know Nathan Hale, historically? Who Nathan Hale was?
Not personally.
Well, I would hope not. I
I'm
didn't
not
know you were
you.
that old. Nathan Hale, one of America's first spies, was captured and hung without trial, famously declaring, quote, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country," unquote. That Nathan Hale?
Yeah.
Although he was not part of the Culper Ring, his capture and execution inspired the Culper Ring's formation by highlighting the need for better organized espionage methods. Nathan Hale had been one of Benjamin Talmadge's friends and a classmate. In September 1776, Nathan Hale volunteered to spy on British forces occupying New York, disguised as a Dutch schoolteacher. Hale gathered intelligence on British troop movements. However, he lacked espionage experience and sufficient cover. Hale was captured on September 21st, 1776, so this is all within like 3 weeks. Possibly after being tricked into revealing himself by a British officer, Major Robert Rogers, who's posed as a Patriot sympathizer. Another theory suggests that Hale was simply careless with his identity and mission details. Despite the risk and what had happened to Nathan Hale, the Culper Ring persisted, driven by patriotism and the belief in their cause. Their most crucial success was uncovering the British plan to attack the French fleet, which was arriving in Newport, Rhode Island in 1780. By intercepting and swiftly relaying British plans, the spies enabled General George Washington to quickly and effectively strengthen defenses, discouraging British General Henry Clinton from launching his intended attack. Which means, had the British plan succeeded, it could have severely damaged the critical French-American alliance in 1780, folks, potentially altering the course of the Revolutionary War entirely. We could all have a British accent. Anyways, the Culper Ring's diligent efforts contributed to preserving this crucial partnership, highlighting the profound impact of espionage in American independence. So a little backstory to why the French came to our side. After their defeat in the 7 Years' War, France chose to side with the American colonists primarily to weaken their rival, Great Britain. Initially cautious, the French openly joined after the American victory at Saratoga in 1777, which demonstrated colonial potential. France provided crucial military support, sending troops, supplies, ammunition, funds, and naval forces. I wonder if we repaid them. Anyways, French involvement culminated in the decisive Battle of Yorktown in 1781, where...
The Battle of Yorktown? 1781?
Yeah.
I think there's a song about that.
There is.
Yeah.
There really is.
I know.
I'm not singing it.
Because you don't know it.
I do. Have you met me?
No.
Okay. Where French soldiers and naval power helped trapped British forces, ultimately securing American victory and therefore independence. Without the French Navy, there is almost guaranteed chance that we would still be speaking in a British accent. I think, personally. Politically, the stakes at this time couldn't have been higher. The colonies were deeply divided. Now I'm talking about leading up to the war and during the early beginning of the war. Families were split between loyalists and patriots. The ordinary person faced daily uncertainty with food shortages, inflation, and violent conflicts. Yet, ordinary men and women persevere, quietly supporting networks like the Culper Ring. Aside from the Culper Ring, several other espionage networks and individual spies operated during the American Revolution. Here are some notable examples. The Mechanics, or the Liberty Boys, operated in Boston before the outbreak of the war, led by Paul Revere. They observed and reported British troop movements and plans, most famously aiding to alerting patriots during Revere's midnight ride. And this is the GF by Sea, one of by land. I believe.
That Paul Revere?
Yes, that one.
Okay.
Also, Sybil Livington was a part of that, and there was another man whose name I just forgot.
No, nobody matters except for Paul Revere. We know that.
And Sybil Livington. There's the Philadelphia Spy Network, which operated during the British occupation of Philadelphia, which was 1777 to 1778. Individuals include...
Was that the capital at that point?
No.
Okay.
This is after, because they moved the capital to New York City, I think, because of the British occupation of Philadelphia.
I couldn't remember the timeline when all that stuff jumped all around there.
This included individuals like Lydia Darragh, D-A-R-R-A-G-H, Darragh, who secretly listened in on British officers' meetings held in her home and then warned Patriot troops about imminent attacks. Because nobody pays attention to the woman in the room. They were very good at that. Because
Ouch!
We're so dumb. We don't know any better, so we can say whatever. It's called pillow talk for a reason. Why are you ouching?
I listen to you.
Okay.
And I'm in the room. Literally.
Then we have the John Honeyman Network. Honeyman, that is his name. Honeyman posed as a loyalist and a cattle trader, infiltrating British lines to gain intelligence, which he secretly passed on to George Washington before the Battle of Trenton. There's the Clark Spy Ring, operated by General George Roger Clark in the Western frontier. Western meaning like the Ohio territory, probably. Area, like that's how far west we're talking at this point. Or maybe Tennessee area, Kentucky. Oh, in fact, my next sentence said, gathering intelligence on British and Native American movements in the Ohio Valley.
Oh boy, that's not Ohio.
The Ohio Valley is right, like, where Ohio meets Kentucky. And then, like, the Ohio River, following the Ohio River, which is the border of Ohio. You don't consider that the northern part of the Ohio Valley?
No.
Okay. From a southern Ohio person, I don't think you were correct.
Well, I stopped listening when you said you were southern.
Wow, that shows how not smart you are.
Well, do we even have to get into this right now?
Okay, so I get that, like, Dayton is at Cincinnati, but it's still a lot more south than, like, I don't know, Cleveland.
Which also sucks.
Or Toledo.
Hey, Dayton,
or Columbus.
Dayton at least has a good museum.
Oh, the art museum? Talking about, or the Wright Pat Air Force Base?
Air Force Base.
Oh. Well, you said museum, and I know there's a museum there, but I always think it's just the Air Force Base.
Well, that's what I call that a museum. It's a museum.
No, it definitely has the museum, but, like, I just think of it as the base, and, like, the Wright Pat Air Force Base. We've had this discussion.
Yes, I know.
Go back to our first episode ever.
Where you were talking about the whale in the museum that wasn't there.
Oh, okay. Anyways.
Where was that episode 2? I don't even remember now. Where was that 1? 1 was the library, so was it 2? I don't remember. It's been almost a year.
I know. That's crazy. Let's talk about Hercules Mulligan's espionage activities. Mulligan was a New York tailor with access to British officers from whom he gathered crucial information. He also passed this vital information to General George Washington, saving his life, apparently, multiple times.
And he's also a character in the play Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so is this guy. Do you know who I'm going to mention?
Hamilton?
No.
Aaron Burr?
No.
Lafayette?
Yep.
Oh, boy.
Well, I mean, I am going to mention him, but yeah. James Armistead Lafayette. It was an enslaved African-American spy who posed as a runaway slave to infiltrate British General Cornwallis's camp. He provided critical intelligence to the Marquis de Lafayette, who is portrayed in Hamilton, and Washington. This would be the French Marquis de Lafayette and Washington before the decisive Battle of Yorktown, allowing for both a land and sea blockade. The whole reason we won the war. Okay. He would then take the Frenchman's last name. After the war, he applies for his freedom, because that was a thing for spies and people and African Americans who served on both sides, both the British and the American side, that they were then promised freedom in exchange for their service. However, Lafayette was denied freedom after the war because he is a spy. Because he was a spy, nobody knew that he actually served, kind of thing. And that is until 1786 when the Marquis de Lafayette said, no, you really have to give this man his freedom. He actually was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was serving. There would be British African-American slaves that were loyal to the British were also given freedom, probably at a higher rate. I mean, Britain outlawed slavery, I want to say, in 1833, maybe, which is obviously 30 plus years before America did, and we had a whole war. The Culper Ring's success wasn't flashy battles, but subtle triumphs in secrecy and intelligence. Their courageous work gave General George Washington the vital edge to strategize effectively, ultimately leading to the British surrender at Yorktown in 1781. Now, the war would technically continue for another 2 years, before the Treaty of Paris, whatnot. I think that was 84, 83, I can't remember. But this was it. This was it. Yorktown was it. Most of what we know about the Culper Spy Ring became public only in the 20th century, particularly beginning in the 1930s through careful historical research, archival discoveries, and the declassification and examination of previously hidden documents. So we have Morton Pennypacker's research was the 1930s to the 1940s. Morton Pennypacker was a Long Island historian. He was instrumental in uncovering much of the Culper Ring's hidden story. He meticulously matched handwriting samples and documents, helping lead to the discovery that Robert Townsend was the elusive Culper Jr. Before this, his role had remained unknown for nearly 150 years. Pennypacker and other historians deciphered the numerical Culper code by cross-referencing surviving letters from the spy network. This is also where we start to understand historically what Rivington did. Revealing the code allowed researchers to reconstruct and interpret the spy's secret messages clearly for the first time. The publication of George Washington's correspondence, particularly by the Library of Congress and the National Archives, significantly broadened the understanding of espionage activities during the Revolution. Many original letters, codes, and reports about the Culper Ring appear in these volumes, hopefully still safe. From the 1950s and on, historians continued to piece together details from journals, letters, and official documents, steadily raising public awareness and adding more information in and getting a little more detailed. Popular books, documentaries, and media portrayals like Brian Kilmeade's book, George Washington's Secret Six, and the AMC television series, Turn, Washington Spies, which ran from 2014 to 2017, brought widespread public attention and recognition to the Culper Ring's contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the TV show you were thinking of?
Yes.
Okay.
Although it really wouldn't surprise me if there's another one that the British made, but...
Well, yeah.
Because the BBC seem to make shows on all that stuff before anybody over here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, or even if it's just mentioned in other TV shows. Even if it's not like there's a...
I wonder if they did a Doctor Who episode on it.
Wasn't it John Adams has isn't there a series called John Adams?
Yeah.
That probably mentions it at some
Yeah.
point, even if it's not a main storyline. Because I don't know who else was involved necessarily, like, at that high of a level. If John Adams knew anything, I don't feel like they did. At least not that I know of. The other founding fathers. So members of the Culper Ring, of course, maintained strict secrecy, destroying evidence of their espionage activities and rarely discussing them even publicly, even after the war. Their identities and contribution were not officially documented in public accessible records until, as we were talking about, the 20th century. Thus, the Culper Ring's vital role in American victory remained largely unknown for over a century. It gradually surfaced through historical detective work and archival discovery, ultimately gaining recognition as a key component of the Revolutionary War's success. The Culper Spy Ring, keep skipping over the word spy, the Culper Spy Ring illustrates how intelligence and bravery behind the scenes can change the course of history. Ordinary citizens, risking everything, shaped the destiny of a fledgling nation. They remind us that history isn't made solely by generals and politicians. It is often crafted by quiet heroes working tirelessly behind the curtain. And that's not supposed to be a Wizard of Oz reference. Anyways.
Yes, it was.
No, it really wasn't. Thank you for joining us, me and Dan, here on Time Tellers. Until next time, keep history alive. We appreciate you and have a good rest of your day. Renee is spunky on spring break.
Sure. Is that why this is almost an hour?
Oh, good luck.
I don't even have to edit much.
Oh, God. Well, there's a few things you must edit.
Should I hit stop?
Yes.
Okay, I'll hit stop.